I never go.
It's 5:05. I'd like to reconvene the Board of County Commissioners meeting and open up the public hearing at 5:05 certain. Commissioners, we'll start. We have 3 items to approve this afternoon, so we'll start with item A, administration, the budget resolutions for the East Putnam Utilities Fund for the VFD Drive projects, $248,613. So, Ms. Julianne?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman. The first budget resolution brought to you today is related to the previously awarded bid 22-22 to complete the upgrades to the East Putnam water system. That work has already been approved at consent. This simply takes the funding as it was approved to be an ARPA project and takes it from the miscellaneous grant fund, which is where the ARPA funds are currently held, and moves it into the East Putnam Water Fund so that that asset is properly recorded.
Second.
Okay, we've got a proper motion to move approval on item A and a proper second. Before I'll go to any commissioner comments, I'm going to open this item up for public comment. Any individuals wishing to make public comment on this particular item? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public comment portion. Any commissioner comments? Okay, seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, we'll move down to item B, approval of the resolution adopting the tentative millage rates for fiscal year 2022 and 2023, resolution 2022-091. Ms. Julianne?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Commissioner. And just a point of clarity, item B and C will be wrapped into the same item. What you have before you is the proposed millage rates as well as the rollback rates as required. The meeting was advertised by the trim notice. So what we have is from the change in the budget from the tentative budget to today, the major changes are that we have brought in some of the carry forward projects as well as the reserve balances to the appropriate funding. So you will see a difference in the bottom line fund balances. You do have there a first motion and a second motion to pass the resolution adopting the millage rates. Then the second is to adopt the budget. All 3 of those bullet points, A, B, and C, need to be read. I can read them at your direction after or before discussion is held.
Okay. All right. So we can do these one right after the other, correct?
Yes, the first motion is going to be to pass A, B, and C, bullet points A, B, and C on page 150 of your agenda.
Right.
And then the second motion is to adopt the fiscal year 23 budget, all funds 227,300, 262.
My question would be, if I may, is do we have to read the actual name of the resolution along with the 3 items, A, B, and C?
Yes.
Okay. What's the pleasure of the board? Yeah, I'll open up for, can I do both of these items for public comment? Or I can do them separate, Rich.
Rich.
Can I have okay, all right. We'll open up public comment for item B on the resolution adopting the tentative millage rate. Any individuals wishing to make public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public comment portion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion
Okay.
to pass the resolution adopting the final millage for fiscal year 2022-23. The fiscal year 22-23 Putnam County-wide operating millage rate of 9.3099 mils, which is the same as last year's millage rate, but 10.62% higher than the rollback rate of 8.4162 mils. The fiscal year 2022-23 Putnam County non-countywide operating millage rate for the fire tax municipal service taxing unit MSTU of 1.1000 mils, which is the same as last year's millage rate. This rate is 10.93% higher than the rollback rate of 0.9916 mils. together with an aggregate millage is 10.2741 mils, which is 10.65% higher than the aggregate rollback rate of 9.2850 mils.
Okay, got a proper motion on the floor.
I'll second it, but I think he needs to actually read the resolution 22-091. Is that correct, Rich?
Okay, resolution of the Board of County Commissioners, Resolution 22091 of Putnam County, Florida, adopting the tentative levy of ad valorem taxes for Putnam County for fiscal year 22-23. Just by title only? Thank you.
Okay, got a proper corrected motion, and still got a second?
Yes.
And we've got a second. Okay, with that, we'll open it up for commissioner comments. Commissioner Adamczak?
So the reserves after this from sheet 152 is still 15.2 million
That's in the general fund, yes, sir.
in general fund reserves. I believe we should roll back the millage to full rollback, but I don't think I have the support of the rest of the commission in rolling back to full millage. So I'd just like to read into the record based on prior documents that we got and what I feel that would look like. So if we roll back to 8.4162, that would leave us with reserves, if we utilize reserves to give back to the citizens, of around $9.8 million, which would be about $3.8 million above the minimum required at the 10%. Do I think that's the best idea in the world? Probably not, because I think that just leaves us $0.8 million if we fully funded. There's around $3 million of items that were NA that we didn't really say yet where the money's going to come from. But that would allow us to do that whole $3 million and still leave us $800,000 above reserves. If we did back to 8.5 mils, it would leave us with 10.3 million in reserves, 4.3 million over the 10%, which is required, 0.3 million over the 16%, which is what I guess we tend to try to go to based on GFAO or something.
GFOA.
I support doing the 10% because I think money is better in the hands of the people. Again, if we spent that $3 million, if we funded everything that was on there, the NA section, that would still leave us 1.3 million over the 10%. If we went back to 8.9 mil, it would give us $12.7 million in reserves, which is 6.7 million above the 10% required, 2.7 million above the 16%. If we fully funded the 3 million of NA, that would still put us $3.7 million above the 10%, and 300 grand below the 16%. If we went to 8.99, which is really, I think, worst case where we should go, we'd be at 13.3 million in reserves, 7 million above 10%, and 3.3 million above 16%. We could fully fund the complete NA list and still be $300,000 above 16%. I propose that we try to go to the 8.99 and give the people back some and be able to fully fund the 3 million of NA if we so choose throughout the year, and still have plenty of money left in the reserves under the 16% guideline from the government. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Rawls?
Along the same lines, if we're not going to give the money back, the least thing we could do is increase the wages of the employees. We've shorted them every year that I've been here. They went 10 years at a pay raise, then they got a 6% one year, 3%, 3%. And if nobody's noticed today, the stock market took a pretty steep dive when the CPI was released this morning at 8:30. I stuck around the house to watch that happen, to see what was going to happen. And, you know, we took another hit on inflation. And it's, we have an opportunity here to do something right for the employees instead of stopping at the $13 an hour. Actually start pushing people up now, get ahead of this. We've got the money. I do agree that we could take some of the rollback advantage, but I also think that we can invest in the employees and stop the bleed, because we're losing a lot of employees on a regular basis because we're not in a position to be competitive with some of the surrounding counties and nothing close to what the private sector is paying right now.
Okay. Commissioner Adamczak?
I agree with that to a point, and I think even if we brought, my understanding from talking through the idea of going to $15 an hour in the past, several months ago, I think it would cost around $1 million to get us the rest of the way to 15. Is that a round rate from I know I had a conversation with Sarah about it, but is that a round rate, 900,000, 1.1 million? to get us to 15 with a little bit of getting rid of the,
Commissioner, off the top of my head, I can't recall that number. I thought it was a little over that, but,
okay. So I think we could still do that and get rollback back some and still be way above the 10%. Because again, if we went down to 8.9999 as a rollback rate at 10%, we'd have $7 million. So we'd still have $4 million beyond the $3 million that we are in that A category from the budget presentation. So even if it was $2 million, we would still be ahead by around $2 million, if for anything that new that may come in above 10%. I just think this is an opportunity where we are flush because of good planning for several years with reserves. We have the perfect storm in the economy where our citizens are going to be negatively impacted. And I think this is an opportunity to give them back a little bit of the rollback and help out the community. And again, I stand by that only because it's a proven fact. When citizens get it back, it takes 7 transactions to get that money back in the government. I do understand it doesn't come back to the county government per se directly, but that is how we fund the federal government and the state government, who provides the majority of our finances. Thank you.
Commissioner Rawls?
Is that, not just the moving people to $15 an hour, but taking a look at the other staffers, that last year you had about a 7% rate of inflation, a little over 7%. This year you're at north of 8.5%. You know, if we were able to get to around 8%, that would at least take some of the sting out of this inflation that's been that's hit the employees over the past couple of years. Because I think what scares me the most out of today's news is the fact that fuel prices are down so low, energy costs are down, and yet inflation went up again for the 3rd month in a row. So I really think we have an opportunity to do something good here for the staff and for the citizens as well, because every time we lose an employee, it costs money to bring someone in and retrain them. So I'll be in favor of that.
Okay, Commissioner Turner?
I don't think anybody in this county wants to take some of the rollback any worse than I do, but I think we have to do it differently than this if we're gonna do it in the future, and I would like to work on it some for next year for sure. But to take a rollback at this point, then the Board of County Commissioners side of this equation is taking the complete rollback ourselves. The constitutionals are all getting their money that they've asked for because we've approved all their requests. So basically, the only people that's going to take it on the chin are Public Works and Emergency Services and what have you, and we're going to have them catch the brunt of this. It's not going to be the other side. I think that if we're going to do a rollback, and I am very interested in it along with you, Commissioner Adams Act, looking at it for next year. But I think we're going to have to do it before we start. We're going to have to decide to accept some of that rollback or try to meet that rollback before the constitutional officers make their budget request, because then we know how much money is available for them to be able to take their part of it. So if I'm not mistaken, or if I'm talking out of school, one of y'all tell me, but I think at this point, if we did that, it would be all on the BOCC side, correct?
that is correct. You would also have to derive a plan as to what you're going to do to support those expenses that you're paying for out of reserves next year. Are you going to, so for whatever staff raises you give or for whatever rollback you give back to the taxpayers, are we saying that we're going to retro next year to the taxpayers and or the employees and reduce their wages? Because these are reoccurring expenses that you've budgeted.
But next year, the rollback would be on additional monies to what we have reoccurring
Yes.
now.
Well, that is true. Depending on property values, I guess that's the caveat to what you just said.
I just don't see how we can give the vote to give the raises and vote to give the constitutionals all their requests and to do all this, and then when at the last minute, we say, okay, we're gonna take some rollback this year, but the board's gonna have to take it all, so any cuts are gonna have to come out of EOC or the emergency operations and public works, and and the board side of this, and all the constitutional officers get to continue on with whatever they're doing with the same rates, because we basically approved all their budget requests. So I just don't see how we can do it at this late date this year. And I think we need to look at it next year. And the first discussion next year is that if we're interested in doing this, would be that we try to take the additional monies that may come in next year, and that we're gonna keep a percentage of them right up front in the get-go. And that's what we would give out the constitutional offers budget request is against that amount of money, instead of waiting here to the end and we use the amount of money that we actually had come in this year. So I'd certainly see both sides of this. I just really don't see how we can do it at this late date. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Adamsack?
So my proposal, let's say we remove doing any further wage increases. If we went to 8.9999, which is 4 decimals out, allows for everything that is proposed in the budget, allows for the extra $3 million that is marked NA in the budget proposal, and doesn't take anything away from the BOCC. It takes nothing away from any of that constitutionals, so it fully funds everything that's been proposed and put in front of us today.
Only
Unless if
with the
this
use
budget
of,
isn't accurately portraying everything that's proposed,
No,
which is
sir.
under state statutes required to be presented to us.
I think you're confused on that. Caveats are, the budget takes into account the millage rate as proposed of 9.3099.
Right.
And then the revenue generated, the reoccurring revenue is budgeted to offset reoccurring expenditures.
Sure.
There is no part of, you couldn't get to 8.9999 unless you're using one-time reserves on reoccurring expenses. There's no other way to cut that.
Right.
I'm sorry, is that what your proposal is, to use
Yeah,
the
use
reserves?
the reserves,
Okay,
absolutely.
and so, well, then you have to
It still puts us
determine,
above the 16% reserve. It still puts us $3.3 million above the 16%.
Reserves for reoccurring expenses.
Right. No, we're getting rid of it. We're cutting down the reserves to $13.3 million from
But we've got to
15.3.
make it, I'm not trying to argue, I'm just trying to have a casual conversation, Mr. Chairman, so try not to hit me with a gavel if you decide to slam me down. The only question I had was that the reduction now would come from reserves, but it would be reductions from reserves to pay reoccurring expenses, and so that $3 million would have to be the first $3 million out of next year's increase, because somebody has to cover that reoccurring expense that we're gonna use reserves to cover this year, correct, or am I wrong?
yes, sir, you have to have a plan as to how you're gonna handle that cut next year, because your reserves essentially is a savings account. When you deplete it, it's gone.
Right.
You still have the reoccurring expenses that have to be covered. So something has to happen. You have to cut services, you have to demote staff, you have to reduce funding to a constitutional office. Somewhere next year has to have a plan as to how we sustain a budget.
So if you keep it the same, then you'd still carry forward the same reserves. So I'm saying at some point we need to start cutting some things, or at least staying the same.
But, yes, sir, and completely understand what you're saying. If our budget had an allocation where we were building reserves, then you're right, your theory holds true. But this budget does not put a dollar of revenue into reserves. Reserves have all been built through attrition and/or different aspects of projects that have carried forward. And so essentially, we budget dollars out of this year's money. That project doesn't get complete for whatever happens. That carry forward increases on the revenue side, and the reserve increases on the expense side.
Right,
So
but we're-
essentially, you would have to have something in order to build those.
Yeah, the something is the $9.2 million of reserves that are over the 10% that's required.
They aren't building, they're static.
Yeah, I know, we shouldn't be stacking that much, in my opinion. In this commissioner's opinion, we should never be above 16%, and we
Sure.
should be between 10 and 16.
And we absolutely can find one-time expenditures that would be appropriate to use those down to a point where you're comfortable.
But not for reoccurring expenses.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Rawls?
The reoccurring expenses should have been looked at over the past 3 years. The first year I came here, we talked about doing it. The second year and the third year, we're just kicking the can down the road. The truth is, the $15 an hour minimum wage is going to catch up to you. And when you take a look at what people are being paid right now in the private sector or in other counties, and then you take a look at what we're paying our folks, and I'm talking about people beyond $15 an hour, there's a huge disparity. You know, you hire somebody and it's $65,000 a year in the same position where somebody that's been here for 25 years is making almost half that. Those problems need to be addressed. Stick your head in the sand all you want. I won't be here next time y'all discuss this, but this is going to have to be corrected. And ignoring it doesn't make it go away. I think you have an opportunity right now to start making adjustments. You know, the word attrition is thrown around. That you have positions that haven't been filled since I've been here. Start with that. But at some point, you're going to have to make an investment in your staff. The weeds in the parking lot, they're overgrown. You have to step over weeds to get to a sidewalk. Our buildings are in deplorable condition. We're willing to let that go, but we can't do that to the human capital that we have and made investments in. And I'm telling you right now, it's going to be a recurrent problem. I know you need recurrent revenue to address it, but at some point, you've got to start taking a look at where all the money's being spent. I've taken a look at the budget that was sent to us, all 177 pages. And what I keep finding on a regular basis is that you have less money set aside in 2023 that you do in 2022, in some cases even 2021. So maybe this county can do business more efficiently in 23 than they could in 21 or 22. I don't see how, but I think the employee is the most important thing you got going for you right now, and that really needs to be considered.
Commissioner Turner?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I have nothing to add. I'll call for question.
Okay. Appreciate the conversations. There's no question about that from everybody. I do think that since we have, in place to start budget talks earlier and have presentations, that these are conversations that we need to have sooner than we get to this particular date. We've got a proper motion and a proper second. All in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Oh.
You did.
I did. Okay, I'll call for the question again. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay, passes 3-2 with Commissioner Rawls and Commissioner Adams Act dissenting. Okay, item C, adopt the budget, all funds for fiscal year 2022-23.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt fiscal year 2022-23 budget, all funds, $227,300,262.
We've got a proper motion and a proper second. I'll open it up for public comment. Any individual wish to make public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none. Any commissioner comment? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay, passes 3-2. Commissioner Rawls and Commissioner Adams Act dissenting. Okay, those are all the items for the 505.
Yes, sir.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, we stand adjourned.